And welcome back to Nashville, Tennessee. It's the 140th Supreme Convention of the Knights of Columbus. As you can hear in the background, the crowd waiting for the stage dinner. We're coming to you live from the Gaylord Hotel and Convention Center, as we have all day long. I'm Doug Keck, joined on set as always by Senior Vice President for Communications, Strategic Partnerships for the Knights of Columbus, Jonathan Reyes. And again, Jonathan, this is the stage dinner. You know, we go through all the hard work that the Knights have been doing. We kind of demonstrated all that, but you got to have a good time too. That's a Catholic way, isn't it?
That's when the good time starts, right? With a very Catholic spirit about it too. So it'll start and end in prayer, and in the middle we'll hear some good talks. But it's also a lot about just the fellowship of the guys being together. They celebrate what they're doing in their states or jurisdictions. So it's international. Everyone gets a song played according to their state or where they're from. And it's just got a great spirit about it.
Right, and Cardinal Dolan, we were talking to earlier, he's going to be the keynote speaker.
The keynote, right. So we'll hear from a number of people tonight. We'll see a tribute to past Supreme Knight Carl Anderson. We'll get a look at the new Mother Teresa video, and we'll get to see Cardinal Dolan give a talk on religious freedom.
Right. Well, he was talking all about what he was doing in Poland and in Ukraine, tying in a really great way with all the work other apostles like yourselves, the Knights of Columbus, are doing. And what's interesting with this too, again, this is like a flag waving event. It's like the other thing that's very popular, we were just talking about before we came on, the idea that the pin swaps.
Yes, where all of the guys who lead states want to get every pin, each state has its own pin, from another guy, and it's its own ceremony. So there's still some ritual left in America, and a lot of it's in the Knights of Columbus.
With that being said, before we get to the state's dinner, before we get a chance to talk to Michael Warsaw, we're going to take a look at a great video having to do with the John Paul II Center, walking with St. John Paul II. Stay with us.
Welcome to the second Walking with St. John Paul II pilgrimage.
I've never done a pilgrimage before, so there's a spiritual side of it that I really like. I'm thinking that you're walking with, Pope John Paul II and with other people that have the same mindset as me. It's kind of nice.
The pilgrimage began at Our Lady Queen of Poland, and the pilgrims walked through Rock Creek Park to the St. John Paul II National Shrine, where we concluded with Mass.
A walking pilgrimage is a spiritual exercise that opens our hearts for the meaning of life. To be a pilgrim means to walk with Christ.
St. John Paul II was known as the Pilgrim Pope. You feel a special connection with St. John Paul II's outdoorsiness and his spirit of travel.
St. John Paul II definitely had a large influence on the youth of the world. He certainly influenced me and inspired me. He's definitely inspired a lot of the young men of the world to be active with the Knights of Columbus.
In these moments, we find him, his presence, when we gather people, the spirit of St. John Paul II alive. It's very inspiring.
It was a very collegial, fraternal spirit, young and old, moving together, singing together, praying together. It was a great experience.
And thank you so much for staying with us here, joined on set by our chairman of the board and chief executive officer, the EWTN, known to everybody, Michael P. Warsaw. Great to see you, Michael.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
Catch up with you.
Thank you.
A global traveler out there and about.
Always seems like, the network has something going somewhere. So.
Right, exactly. It's like talking to the Knights. I mean, they're all over the place doing so many things. In so many ways, EWTN and the Knights are very much involved with the whole new evangelization, and it's been a long relationship going back to Mother Angelica, right?
Absolutely. Really, from the very founding of EWTN, the relationship with the Knights of Columbus has really just been such an important one in terms of the growth and development of the network, and certainly Mother's relationship and that continuing relationship with the Knights of Columbus. Certainly when EWTN was launched, Virgil Deccan, of course, would have been the Supreme Knight, who was very supportive and very much a part of assisting in building the network through the Knights and through the councils. Ultimately, Virgil attended Mother's funeral and really represented the Knights of Columbus at Mother Angelica's funeral. Certainly then, into the tenure of Supreme Knight Carl Anderson, who was a great friend of Mother Angelica. Prior to even his Knights of Columbus days, Carl, was the one who introduced Mother Angelica to Ronald Reagan, and
oh wow,
really helped in many ways, to introduce Mother and to build Mother's profile with certain areas, and then of course continuing, then throughout his tenure, many great accomplishments. Our collaboration, of course, on EWTN News Nightly, which really would not have happened and really would not have come into existence were it not for that collaboration with Supreme Knight Anderson during his tenure. And now to the Supreme Knight Kelly. So it's a new era in a way, and a new part of the history of EWTN and the relationship with the Knights. But really with that common goal and that shared goal and mission of evangelization and catechesis and all of those things that are so critical in this incredibly crazy time that we live in.
So Jonathan, from the Knights' perspective, how do you see that working relationship with EWTN now and over the years?
Well, what excites me is I think everything that Supreme Knight Patrick Kelly said today, from evangelization to defending the family to being pro-life, and even the concern for the marginalized. These are all things that the network has been so diligent in pursuing, and it's been a part of Mother Angelica's vision in a particular way. And so it's great to see visions aligning on a number of things that are deemed the most important things, right? Like these are the things that have to be gotten right, starting with evangelization and caring for the marginalized. If we get that space right, then there is real an option for renewal, and there's real hope.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely.
And one of the great things I would think that in talking today with Jonathan, that whole grassroots approach that the Knights have, which ties in totally to Mother Angelica's approach to evangelization. Right?
Absolutely, no, absolutely. And and really that's a part of what the relationship was with the Knights of Columbus from the very beginning, because back in the days when EWTN was just struggling to get off the ground, it was so important to have petition drives and parish drives and all of these signature drives and getting people at the grassroots level involved in supporting EWTN to get cable systems to carry it. And so much of that work was done in those early days by local Knights, by Knights of Columbus councils who were out there, men on the front lines who, wanted to support the work that Mother Angelica was doing. And, in many ways, had it not been for those rank and file, boots on the ground sorts of, Knights doing those efforts, EWTN would not be what it is today. So I can't underestimate really over the years in not just in that way, but in so many ways, big and small, great, big ideas, simple things. The Knights of Columbus have been critical to the history and development of EWTN.
It's interesting you should say that, because here's EWTN, and we've worked together with EWTN, for me wearing different hats. EWTN has been capable of helping a lot of other organizations get on the map, get their name out, to launch what you might call, I don't know, the green shoots or something in the church. These never despise small beginnings, as Benedict says, but now that you've been placed in EWTN, that you're a global network, there's no one who can compare with you in the field. You have made yourself available to all these different ministries to advance a whole set of things. And so it's a gift that gave back, clearly.
And I think what many people don't realize is that in the original mission statement of EWTN that Mother Angelica wrote, together with the help of Father John Harden, the servant of God, so I think it's kind of interesting. We may be the only Catholic organization that perhaps has a mission statement that was, crafted by two eventual saints of the church. But part of that mission statement, beyond talking about the advancement of truth, talks about EWTN being a platform for organizations who are faithful to the teaching of the church to grow and develop and to flourish. I mean, that's really, and I find that fascinating, because that was really an intentional part of Mother Angelica's vision when she began EWTN 40 years ago.
Vision's the right word, because at the time you're thinking, we're going to be a platform for all these other organizations, and now you're global, and that's amazing.
I remember one time asking Mother Angelica, this would have been certainly before her stroke, so 22 years ago. I remember asking her, did you ever think it would become this? And she smiled and laughed, and she said, sweetheart, I was just too worried about getting from day to day to think about what it might be one day. So, which was that great lesson of Mother and her spirituality and her charism of live in the present moment, live day to day, trust in God's providence.
Yeah, hey, breach of etiquette here, Doug. You've been with EWTN for 25 years, 23 years?
26 years.
26 years. So you've watched all this happen. This must seem amazing to you as well.
Well, we always talk about it's the loaves and the fishes. You can't believe, you can't believe these challenges are put in front of us, and then the Lord provides, and whatever is getting done and the impact it has is far greater than what's being put into it, and it can only be God's work, and where it is, who it got started by, the people involved that came together to make it happen and ongoing. It's clearly something that's God's work, and God's hand is in it.
When, as you were saying, a moment ago, just this idea of these green shoots and this, I think EWTN came along and obviously working alongside the Knights of Columbus and in partnership with the Knights of Columbus, and it really was part of the new springtime that John Paul II, talked about, and I think there's so much fruit that's been born from that era today, up to today, and so it's an incredible work of providence and
yeah. What I wanted to ask, I was listening to, you talked about the early days with Virgil, and then obviously with Carl all these years, and now, Patrick Kelly taking over now, but obviously coming out of the COVID where things were kind of in stasis. And, each of the nights, there's a general theme, but there's some specific focus. And it seems in some ways, I don't know if it could be any more aligned between the two organizations than it is going forward right now.
I think that's absolutely correct. I mean, as Supreme Knight Kelly talked about, right out of the gate today, what does it mean to be in a post-Dobbs America? We've obviously been at the front lines of the pro-life movement, since August 15th of 1981 when we went on the air. That's been a constitutive part of what EWTN is, of our mission. And we've all been working towards this common goal. We've all been talking about that common goal. And now that's been achieved, but the work now is even greater, and so I think that's where the relationship with the Knights of Columbus and EWTN, certainly the relationship of EWTN to so many other entities, whether in the pro-life space or the broader community as well. Why it's so important in this particular moment. We need not to rest on our laurels and say, we got there after 50 years, we got there. No, what we need to say is, yes, that has been achieved, and now we need to redouble our efforts, really, as the Supreme Knight said this afternoon, to support women in situations where they have a crisis pregnancy.
That ASAP program.
Exactly.
Great idea.
Exactly.
Great idea,
exactly. No, I think those are really critical initiatives, and I think working together, it's important for us to work together to move forward with those initiatives.
Moving forward is in two ways. One is just continuing the work we're doing. We've got state fights coming up on that, but let me ask you a more general question. You're in this interesting space of media, and that's changing radically. And the trust in institutions, all that sort of dynamics going on. What's the future of EWTN there? How does EWTN step into a new media space?
Yeah, I think we continue to push out. I think we continue to use new platforms and new technologies. I think, obviously, when Mother Angelica founded EWTN back in 1981, it was, the dawn of cable television and multi-channel distribution, and, you sort of shotgunned it out there, and, people could come to it. It's a little more curated environment anymore. It's much more a digitally driven, curated kind of experience, and so that's a different shift. And so you see that pivot in just the general media consumption habits in society in general. And so I think we're doing our part to move into that space and to understand that, but to really bring the mission of EWTN to those next generations who, frankly, don't consume media the way any of us do.
Absolutely.
Or the way many of our viewers of our, legacy television channels do. But, that's such an important pivot, and it's such an important focus for us going forward. And I think we've had an incredible, and been blessed to have an incredible impact all of these 40 years, and I think we're really just getting started.
Right. Likewise for the Knights, for you, your idea of reaching out digitally, the Knights have been doing a lot more in that space as well, right?
Right, and so as head of communications, these are questions we're asking too, like what is the most effective way to reach a generation? And it's certainly the tools, and we all know these tools, and implementing them isn't easy, but we've got to get them going. One of my questions to both of you is, does it affect content? Not the basics of the faith, we know the faith, but are the tools we're using affecting the way we communicate in such a way that it really does require a different kind of production of information? And the way we talk to young people is having to reduce truth to 1-minute sound bites. What's that doing for apologetics and for formation? And I think these are the questions I find very, very interesting.
Sure. Well, I think there's no question that with the opportunities that are presented by many of the new platforms, particularly in the social media space, the opportunity to reach enormous audiences in a way that perhaps didn't exist previously is there. It presents, though, the challenge, which is how do you adapt your content to fit those platforms, fit the audiences and the consumers of those platforms, but yet really still be impactful, still be true to your mission, still be true and faithfully Catholic. Yes, you can absolutely use these platforms and do that. I mean, there's plenty of great examples of, TikTok, not necessarily the, most Catholic or Christian of platforms by any means.
Right.
But there are many examples of Catholic entities, EWTN, the Napa Institute, others, who are using that platform to really have an impact, and reaching hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people on these platforms.
Right.
So, I think one of the great geniuses of Mother Angelica and the great inspirations that Mother had was right from the very beginning. She embraced a platform that was brand new and really unproven. And throughout her time and throughout our 40-year history, we've always embraced every technology platform, every possible means of outreach to carry out our mission. And we continue to do that. And I think that's absolutely the right
absolutely.
move.
And one of the gifts you brought in doing that is, I was sharing with Doug earlier, that there's so much hope that comes through EWTN, because so much of what people see is negative, particularly now, especially about the church.
Right.
But you guys are a gift because you're bringing lifting up all these good things, and it's a real gift to us. It's a gift to the Knights, and it's a pleasure to be partners with you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. The truth attracts. That's what it's all about. And the work of the Knights, and of course the work of EWTN. Thank you, Michael, for your leadership.
Thank you.
And we're now thanking you for being here, but we're going to take you inside the room for the procession. Very interesting procession of the state and the national flags. Take a look.
Viva Jesus! Please remain standing for the procession of the national flags. Present the colors. Please join me in thanking the members of the 82nd Airborne Division, Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Please be seated. Your Eminences, Your Beatitude, Your Excellencies, my brother knights and ladies, welcome to the State's dinner. It's been too long. This dinner is a time-honored tradition, and I'm grateful to be here this evening with all of you. We are gathered tonight to celebrate what our brother knights and their families have achieved in the past year. And we are also here to prepare for the year ahead. Earlier today, I said that our Lord is calling us to step into the breach. And I can think of no better phrase to describe the task before us. For 140 years, starting with Blessed Michael McGivney, each generation of knights has stood in the breach. From our charitable giving to our financial protection, from placing ultrasound machines to standing with Ukraine, the knights are there when the need is the greatest. We did so much over the past year, but there is still so much more to do. Our pro-life work is especially urgent. The repeal of Roe is a historic milestone, but it's just as much a call to action. In the days ahead, we'll take our pro-life work to a new level, especially by serving vulnerable mothers and their children through our new ASAP program. ASAP stands for Aid and Support After Pregnancy, and it's a top priority in the U.S. and Canada. And as we work to change hearts and minds, we'll also do everything we can to change laws in the United States and around the world. Our Lord has given us a great opportunity, and now our task is to rise to the occasion. I know I speak for all knights when I say we will do everything in our power to push forward in the fight for life. We will also stand up for our faith and for the family. That is, after all, exactly what Father McGivney founded the Knights to do. As I said this afternoon, we live in a time of unprecedented challenge. We must defend our rights as a people of faith and bring our values and our voice to the public square. And we must redouble our efforts to support the family. The pressures facing our families, and especially our young people, are extraordinary. Confronting these challenges will be difficult, but the difficult things are the most worth doing. And the future of our societies and of the church hangs in the balance. At last year's convention, Pope Francis called the Knights of Columbus to, and I quote, "be committed to building up rather than tearing down." And in the past year, we have done this. The Holy Father has made a similar appeal to us in his message this year. He is, and I quote, "convinced that the Knights will find creative ways to place our ingenuity, our generosity, and our trust in God's grace at the service of the urgent task of spiritual renewal." My brother Knights, this is exactly what we must do, together with our families and in solidarity with our bishops and priests. There's a reason we've long been called the strong right arm of the church. So let's continue to use that strength. For our families, for our faith, let's stand up and step forward into the breach. As we begin our dinner, let's start as we always do, with prayer. Our invocation will be delivered by His Eminence Cardinal Blaise Cupich, the Archbishop of Chicago. He joined the order in 1981 and is a member of Chicago's St. Cabrini Council. Your Eminence, thank you for being with us. It's my privilege to invite you to lead us in the invocation.
I'm so grateful to the Supreme Knight, Patrick Kelly, for this honor of offering this invocation. Let us pray. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Generous and ever merciful Father, bless the Knights of Columbus as they gather for their 140th Supreme Convention. Reaching back across the ages, they urge us to listen attentively to your inspired prophet Ezekiel. He raised his voice in search of someone to stand in the breach to protect your people from those who practice extortion and commit robbery, who wrong the poor and the needy and oppress the resident alien without justice. Let his clarion call inspire my brother knights to be unwavering and courageous in living up to their vocations as husbands, fathers, and citizens, so that they may respond to the challenges facing our world, from the wars in Ukraine, Yemen, Syria, and so many other places, to an economy that disenfranchises and kills those on the margins. From the threats to children and family life, to the hostility towards the refugee and migrant on our own borders, and from the calamities of natural disasters and climate change to the deep divisions that destroy unity and peace in our world and our church. Yes, Lord, quicken in these good nights the prophetic boldness of Ezekiel to stand in the breach for the widow, the orphan, the child in the womb, the poor, the victims of war and oppression, always guided by the principles of charity, unity, fraternity, and patriotism. And as they find Our Lady of the Magnificat standing in the breach beside them, may they make her humble prayer their own and join her in praising your mercy from age to age, as you show the might of your arm in dispersing the powerful and the arrogant of mind and heart, and as you lift up the lowly, fill the hungry with good things, and send the rich away empty. And so, as we feed on the words of the ancient prophet Ezekiel and our Mother Mary, we now offer thanks as the sun sets on this day for the food on our tables, which reminds us that you never fail to nourish us in so many ways each day. Let us never take your many blessings for granted. And as we lift our hearts in thanksgiving for this meal, Lord, we humbly ask an added portion of your blessing on all the children represented by the families gathered here tonight. Give these little ones good health. Keep them safe from all harm. And by our example of discipleship, draw them ever closer to you through Christ, who is our Lord, forever and ever. Amen.
Please be seated. Thank you, Your Eminence. As you all know, this is our first States dinner since 2019. There are many things we couldn't do in our virtual conventions over the past 2 years. Most notably, we couldn't give past Supreme Knight Carl Anderson the tribute he deserves. Tonight, we'll make it right and honor Carl for his years of service to the order and to the church. And our worthy Supreme Chaplain, who knows Carl very well and has worked closely with him for decades, will get us started. Please welcome Archbishop William Lori.
Thank you very much, worthy Supreme Knight. It is a great honor and it is a profound joy to offer a tribute to our worthy past Supreme Knight, Carl A. Anderson. And let me begin with this. Carl and Dorian are among my dearest friends. Our friendship began one morning in the early 1980s on the steps of St. Matthew Cathedral in Washington, D.C., when a mutual friend, Monsignor Lorenzo Albacetti, introduced me to Carl. At the time, Carl was working on the Hill, and I was a recently ordained priest trying to finish my doctorate. As time progressed, Carl moved on to HHS, then to the White House, and I became the priest secretary to James Cardinal Hickey, who at the time was the Archbishop of Washington. Carl and I would meet from time to time, on occasion in the White House mess, and along the way, I came to know Dorian and their young and growing family. But the best was yet to come. It began when Carl made the decisive move to serve the Knights of Columbus, first overseeing the Knights' Public Policy Office in Washington, then founding, along with Monsignor Albacetti, the John Paul II Institute in Washington for studies on marriage and family. By then, I was Auxiliary Bishop of Washington, and Carl very kindly invited me to become the state chaplain of the D.C. State Council. As I witnessed Carl in these various roles, I began to appreciate the breadth of his knowledge, the depth of his skills, but also the vision of human life and dignity that permeated his thinking and his decisions, coupled with a loving fidelity to Christ and to the church. But there's more. In the year 2000, Carl became our worthy Supreme Knight. A year later, I became the Bishop of Bridgeport, and as all of you know, Bridgeport and New Haven are geographically close. This afforded me many opportunities to visit with Carl and Dorian, and then one fine day in 2005, Carl asked me to serve as Supreme Chaplain, a privilege for which I shall always be grateful. I mention this because it gave me a front row seat from which to witness Carl's inspired leadership of the Knights of Columbus over 2 decades, leading it to unprecedented growth in membership, in the expanse of its charities, in its insurance and financial products, but most of all, in the breadth of its spirituality and vision. Under Carl's leadership, the Knights of Columbus was established in Poland, Ukraine, Lithuania, France, the Republic of Korea, while its presence increased in the Philippines and Mexico. As the Knights reached new heights of charity under his leadership, so too its commitment to the unborn and their mothers deepened with the expansion of the Order's ultrasound program, its support for the March for Life, and a host of other initiatives designed to help mothers in need and to foster family life, initiatives to which Carl gave vision, leadership, and impetus. As persecution broke out in the Middle East, especially in Iraq and Syria, but also the tragedies in Lebanon, it was Carl's leadership that put the Knights in the forefront of efforts to call attention to the plight of persecuted Christians and other religious minorities to the United States government. It was Carl who led the order in working closely with bishops across the Middle East in coming to the aid of communities that suffered from war, injustice, and deprivation, and most of all, the shedding of innocent blood. Testifying before the Congress and working closely with the Obama administration, Carl persuaded the American government and the international community officially to recognize this religious persecution as genocide. Thus did Carl Anderson lead the order in making visible to the eyes of the world the suffering of those courageous Christians, thus helping to protect and to defend them. These are but a few of Carl's accomplishments over a lifetime of faith, service, and leadership to the Knights of Columbus. Accomplishments that lead me to this conclusion. Few people have the breadth of interests and the depth of knowledge that Carl possesses. Whether it's philosophy, theology, law, business and business ethics, public policy, international affairs, literature, classical music, the cinema, or his expert knowledge of wine and indeed tequila. It is rightly said that Carl Anderson is a Renaissance man, but saying that is still too little. Carl, you are not only a man of many interests and skills, you are a disciple of the Lord, a man of faith and wisdom and insight, born of the Holy Spirit, a man with a capacious mind and an even more capacious heart. This evening, I am proud to join with our worthy Supreme Knight, Patrick Kelly, in honoring you, my good friend, Carl Anderson. Vivat Jesus.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for that moving tribute. There is so much to say about our past Supreme Knight. In his 2 decades at the helm, we launched many of our most historic initiatives and set a new standard of charity, unity, and fraternity. It's impossible to list everything Carl did, but every knight today can bear witness to the difference he has made. Please join me in watching this video that captures the essence of his legacy.
Now, it may seem too ambitious to talk about transforming the world, but the earliest Christians did precisely that. Today, we have the same opportunity. Gentlemen, we have the power given to us by the Holy Spirit to transform the world in the same way.
Carl has an extraordinary capacity and creativity. Whenever he sees someone suffering, he immediately is thinking, how can we be of service? If anybody could be the poster child for Christi Fidelis Laici, I think it would be Carl Anderson. His life was so influenced by St. John Paul II.
Wherever the churches needed attention, Carl Anderson and the Knights are there to help.
It's not just his teachings, it's not just his words, but for me, his presence. Carl Anderson brought the ideals of the Knights of Columbus wherever he went.
This year's KC Coats for Kids program is the beginning of a program that we intend to grow into a significant charitable effort. This is what really the Christian community has to bring, and it is a unique contribution that Christians make, and that is the understanding that life is sacred at every stage of its development and regardless of its condition.
Growth in membership, growth in insurance, expansion to new countries, innovative charitable initiatives, all these are the legacy of Carl Anderson's tenure as Supreme Knight.
In the future, it will be a better day for Haiti.
Carl worked tirelessly to strengthen the Knights of Columbus and prepare the order for an even brighter future.
If you will join me in solidarity with these persecuted Christians, raise high your cross and join me in prayer. My brother Knights, what greater legacy can any of us have than to save the life of a child? One of my proudest moments as Supreme Knight came when I learned that we had placed our 1,000th ultrasound machine in a crisis pregnancy center. When we began, we were saving hundreds, then thousands, and now hundreds of thousands. And now we have saved 1 million lives.
He's one of the most influential lay people in the Catholic Church. He's a backbone of a culture of life in the United States.
Carl Anderson is a man of tremendous vision. Under his leadership, the Knights of Columbus has come to understand its own roots much more deeply.
To see this now for our own founder, Father McGivney, for whom we prayed for so many, many years, to be held up by the Universal Church for his example was just something, you might say, almost overwhelming.
I think it was Carl's faith that gave him not just the vision that everyone is a child of God, but the bravery to hold to that vision, even in very, very difficult times.
I would use 3 words to describe Mr. Anderson: clarity, conviction, and compassion. Clarity in his intellectual acumen, conviction in his faith and the beliefs that underlie his faith, and compassion in the great works of service to those most in need, whether it be persecuted Christians or children in Haiti. The Knights are always there.
The impact that Carl Anderson has made will be lasting for the Knights of Columbus.
El señor Carl Anderson tiene esta labor, esta misión y este corazón tan grande para unificar a todos nosotros en esta única familia de Dios. Más allá de todos estos talentos que tiene, definitivamente, es su corazón. Él palpita por los más necesitados. Es una persona de Dios y es aquel que nos ayuda a vivir como verdaderos hermanos, entregándonos unos a otros.
Standing here, I see what Father McGivney saw so many years ago. I see men of courage. I see men of conviction, the vanguard of the Knights of Columbus. As we extend the hand of brotherhood, we will continue to transform the world around us. Viva Jesus!
That video sums up Carl Anderson's leadership of the order better than I ever could, and yet it barely begins to tell the story of his service. So for my part, I'd like to focus not on his record, but on his character. Simply put, Carl Anderson is a man of virtue who puts his faith into action. I realized this the first time I met him. The year was 1997, and the place was Washington, D.C. I was a young lieutenant in the Navy, and I had recently arrived in our nation's capital. And for some time, I had been considering studying theology as a way to deepen my understanding of our faith. Then someone told me about the John Paul II Institute, and it wasn't long before I was sitting in the office of the dean, Carl Anderson. He told me that there was no better place to study the truths of the human person and God's plan for the human family. While he was talking to me, I realized Carl was describing his own life's work. These were eternal truths that he was working to apply to the challenges of our own day and age. Carl's influence led me not only to the Institute, but also to service with the Knights. And whether it was sitting in his office in 1997 or working closely with him over the past 15 years, I saw firsthand how committed Carl is to deep and lasting change in our culture. He has worked heroically to build a society where the God-given dignity of every life is protected and valued, and where God's plan for marriage and family is embraced. Think about everything Carl has accomplished. He was the founding dean of the Pontifical John Paul II Institute for Studies on Marriage and Family in Washington, D.C. He led the Knights for 20 years as we expanded into new lands. He launched our ultrasound initiative, helping vulnerable mothers and saving thousands of lives each year. He expanded our protection for Catholic families through our life insurance program, nearly tripling it in size to $110 billion. He grew our brotherhood by more than 400,000 men, reaching 2 million Knights for the first time. He led the Knights in aiding persecuted Christians and other religious minorities in the Middle East and elsewhere. And like his predecessors, he put the Knights at the service of the Church in new and creative ways. Each of these achievements, and there are many more, grew out of Carl's commitment to human dignity and his love for Jesus Christ and his Church. And I can also tell you that it was his deep faith that gave him the strength to handle the burdens of his office. No easy decisions come to the desk of the Supreme Knight. But over the past decade and a half, I saw how Carl discerned the Lord's will in every challenge he faced. And what impressed me the most was how he handled it all, while also being a devoted husband and father. Those of us who worked closely with him learned much from him, from his example, about work, about faith, and about family. And I can also say that the contributions to the Knights and the Church were made all the greater by his devoted wife, Dorian. Carl and Dorian worked as a team, and they and we achieved more because of it. And so before I go further, I say on behalf of myself and my wife Vanessa and all our brother Knights and ladies, thank you, Dorian, for supporting your husband as he strengthened all of us. Carl's leadership of the order will be long remembered. In the famous play, A Man for All Seasons, St. Thomas More is rightly depicted as a leader of conscience. He defended the Catholic faith, withstanding even the strongest pressures of his day. The same can be said of our past Supreme Knight. At this critical time in the life of our Church, Carl has modeled what it means to be a Catholic layman. And in so doing, he has become a true Catholic statesman. Carl Anderson surely is a knight for all seasons. There is so much more I could say about him, but I think Carl should say a few words himself. So, my brother knights and ladies, please join me in welcoming this knight for all seasons, past Supreme Knight Carl Anderson.
Thank you very much, my brother knights. Thank you very, very much. The greatest privilege of my life has been to be entrusted by you, my brother knights, for more than 2 decades with the office of Supreme Knight, and words cannot fully express my gratitude to you. Every day that I have held this office, I have sought to merit that trust. And something more. During my first year in office, the terrible events of 9/11 took the lives of many of our brother knights. As I visited Ground Zero and met with the members of the families of our brothers who did not come home that day, I quietly resolved that the Knights of Columbus would always be an organization that would be worthy of their sacrifice and worthy of the trust their families placed in us. And so tonight, I want to thank you, my brother knights, for keeping that promise. My brother knights, as you know, successful leadership in the Knights of Columbus consists in not attempting to do great things yourself, but to call forth the greatness in our brother knights. The great French Catholic theologian Henri de Lubac once wrote that the strength of the Catholic Church is the strength of her charity. And by that measure, the strength of our charity has shone so very brightly these 2 decades. The Knights of Columbus is truly the strong right arm of the Catholic Church. And in this afternoon's report of Supreme Knight Kelly, we saw many examples of that strength and how it builds upon and exceeds the achievements of the past, especially in this truly historic work, the humanitarian work being done by our brother knights in Poland and Ukraine. The best tribute that any past Supreme Knight can receive is the continued success of our order. And by this measure, the past year has been a remarkable testimonial. Thank you. To my mind, the spiritual genius of Blessed Michael McGivney has always consisted in the way he found for Catholic laymen to transform their friends into fraternal brothers. I have found this to be very true in my own Colombian life, and my wish for every state deputy and state officer is to find in their fellow officers the same brotherly solidarity that I have come to regard in our Supreme Chaplain, in our Supreme Knight, and my fellow Supreme officers and directors who have been true fraternal brothers to me and whom I have been so proud to serve with and upon whom I have so often depended. To all of you, I am immensely grateful. Now comes the part where the speaker tends to get emotional, the part where he thanks his wife for the many ways that she has helped him and made possible whatever it is that he has achieved. There are many, many things I could say in this regard regarding Dorian, to thank Dorian for the way she has helped me. But maybe the simplest way is the words of our newest brother knight from Tennessee, Craig Morgan. Darling, I got better than I deserved when I got you. And I would like to say something else, maybe a little different, and the Supreme Knight has already touched on this, and I thank him for that, is to thank Dorian for what she's done for our Order of the Knights of Columbus. In 1979, during his first visit to the United States as Pope, St. John Paul II met with the officers and directors of the Knights of Columbus and the Apostolic Nunciature in Washington, D.C. And on that occasion, when he heard how many men were members of the Knights of Columbus, and then by extension how many families were affected and living in, affected by the Knights of Columbus, he said in a very typical way, "You are a nation." I've never forgotten that. As Supreme Knight, I have always remembered these words of the Pope. And I think we should always remember that although we are an organization of Catholic men, we must keep in mind that so much of what we do affects the lives of millions of women and children. And so as beginning Supreme Knight, I felt it was necessary on countless occasions to seek the counsel of the wisest wife and mother that I knew as to how the Knights of Columbus could find greater ways to support and strengthen our Catholic families. And so tonight, with a heart full of gratitude, and on behalf of the Knights of Columbus and our families, I'd like to thank you, Dorian, for your invaluable and irreplaceable service to the Knights of Columbus, a service that has been hidden these many years, but has nonetheless been very real. So permit me one final observation tonight. Early in my tenure as Supreme Knight, with so many modernization projects underway at the Home Office, I said in the pages of Columbia that we look forward to the future, and we do so with confidence because, in my opinion, the best was yet to come. And so today, with an equally firm resolution, I say to you just as confidently, let us go forward together under the leadership of the Supreme Knight with the conviction that the best is yet to come.
And now, dinner will be served. Bon appetit.
And ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be saluting all of you with state songs tonight. And this year we'll be going A to Z. So let's welcome Alabama.
While the attendees are enjoying their dinner, we'll bring you highlights of the Supreme Knight Patrick Kelly's report from earlier today.
Big wheels keep on turning.
But as we gather here, one opportunity looms especially large. Roe versus Wade is finally gone. We now have a chance to win the fight for life. This day has been a long time coming, and many of us didn't think we'd live to see it. Abortion was never in the Constitution, and by ending Roe, the court has empowered us to end one of the worst injustices in American history. Generations of Brother Knights, both past and present, prayed and worked to reach this day. And we helped rally the pro-life movement. There is no better example than the annual March for Life in Washington, D.C. Knights were instrumental in organizing the first march in 1974. And year after year, we helped it grow. The March for Life has become the largest annual human rights demonstration in the world. Roe is overturned, but we have more work to do. We will continue to march for life until abortion is unthinkable. Our principled stand in the public square has made a difference. So has our tireless work to support mothers and children. From the largest cities to the smallest towns, we've long supported a nationwide network of pregnancy resource centers. Day after day, Knights and their families provide a helping hand and a caring heart. Most notably, we've supported pregnant mothers through our landmark ultrasound initiative. In 2009, we placed 12 ultrasound machines in pregnancy resource centers. And at the time, we hoped to place a few dozen more. 13 years later, we have donated 1,566 life-saving machines. And we are not done. We are not done. The end of Roe is a crucial milestone, but we cannot mistake it for the end of abortion. We can hope it's the beginning of the end. And as Knights, we must push forward with all the courage and compassion we can summon. As much as we've done, there is still so much more to do. We must increase our efforts on every front. Each state has a choice to make. At least half will protect life to some degree, but others will keep the abortion status quo. And some states will even expand abortion, putting mothers and children in greater risk. They will double down on a culture of death, so we must push forward with a message of life. Let's take up the cause. Let's take up the cause in Springfield and Sacramento. Let's oppose abortion in places like Albany, while supporting pro-life laws in Austin and Atlanta. And while we push for change in places like Washington State, let's keep up the pressure in Washington, D.C. Some recent, and I would say superficial polls make it seem like we're alone in our stand for life. And abortion activists certainly want us to believe this. But the good news is that the American people are, in fact, with us. We have found that when you move beyond simplistic labels and ask Americans what they actually think about abortion, there is a clear pro-life consensus. For the last 15 years, the Knights of Columbus has partnered with Marist on a nationwide poll. Far from showing that a majority of Americans are for unlimited abortion, our polling shows that 7 in 10 favor substantial restrictions. Year after year, the overwhelming majority wants to protect life. And more than half of Americans believe taxpayers should never be forced to pay for abortion. Earlier this year, our Knights of Columbus Marist poll found that nearly 2/3 of Americans believe the court should either make abortion illegal or return the issue to the states. This pro-life consensus should give us hope. As faithful citizens, we must hold our elected officials accountable, and we must push for pro-life protections in Congress and in state capitals from coast to coast. We will continue our work until the laws of the land fully protect the right to life. We can start by strengthening our support for pro-life marches. The March for Life in D.C. remains a major priority. And now, state marches will be more important than ever. Let's grow them in size and impact. The bigger the march, the more likely lawmakers will take notice and take action. And that's just as true in other countries. Today, Knights march for life around the world, in Canada, the Philippines, Mexico, Poland, the Republic of Korea, France, and beyond. No matter where we live, the repeal of Roe should give us hope. If we can turn the tide here, we can do it anywhere. And the Knights of Columbus will do our part. But we can't just change the law. We must also change hearts and minds. With Roe gone, many mothers will still experience fear and uncertainty. Many will be tempted to seek an abortion in another state. But the Knights can point them in a different direction, toward life. The best thing we can do is redouble our support for pregnancy resource centers. Day in and day out, these centers help mothers choose life, and they help new mothers give their children a better life. We must ensure that pregnancy resource centers have everything they need. And to start, we'll place even more ultrasound machines so more mothers can see their unborn children. We'll also strengthen our support for new mothers after pregnancy. Abortion was always built on lies. And one of the latest lies is that we don't care what happens after a baby is born. Nothing could be further from the truth. For decades, Knights have partnered with pregnancy care centers and maternity homes to provide diapers, dollars, and other donations to support their critical mission. But now is the time to do even more. Last month, the Supreme Council launched a major initiative. It's called ASAP, and it stands for Aid and Support After Pregnancy. This effort builds on years of our support for women and children. Now, when a council donates to a pregnancy center or maternity home, the Supreme Council will match 20%. We've set an initial target of $5 million for this year alone, but I know we can exceed that goal. ASAP is modeled on the RSVP program. Over many years, RSVP has provided more than $91 million for seminarians and sisters in formation. Imagine if we do the same for pregnancy resource centers. ASAP is a priority, and around the world, I urge every Knight to rededicate himself to supporting mothers and children. We can and we must make abortion a thing of the past. Let's move forward. Let's move forward together toward a future of life. As we prepare for the hard work ahead, I'd like to recognize two brother Knights. The church's pro-life witness is all the stronger for the courageous leadership of Archbishop William Lori. We can all be proud that our Supreme Chaplain is chairman of the U.S. Bishops' Pro-Life Committee at this crucial time for life. And I can tell you, having worked very closely with him on this committee, we are very fortunate. His thoughtful and strategic approach is exactly what we need. And I can also tell you, it comes from his heart, a heart totally committed to the cause of life. So, Archbishop, for myself, but also on behalf of all our brother Knights, thank you for your work and for your witness to life. The second leader is my predecessor, who played a singular role in bringing us this far. Past Supreme Knight Carl Anderson strengthened our pro-life witness. Under his guidance, we multiplied our efforts to support unborn children and vulnerable mothers. Carl worked tirelessly to advance the cause of life. And one of his greatest achievements was the success of our ultrasound initiative. Last October, Pope Francis received us in a private audience. The Holy Father thanked Carl for his years of faithful service to the Church. And looking back, the principled defense of life was central to Carl Anderson's leadership, and indeed to his entire life's work. The Order's pro-life commitment is nothing new. The Knights of Columbus has always been on the side of justice for the unborn. Starting with John McDevitt and Virgil Deacon after him, the leaders of the Order have consistently spoken out against Roe v. Wade. And over his 20 years, Carl Anderson brought that pro-life legacy to a whole new level. With wisdom and foresight, he positioned the Order for this new day in the pro-life movement. And as his successor, I have no more urgent duty than to advance that legacy. We will give a fuller tribute to Carl at the state's dinner this evening. But for now, I say on behalf of every Knight, thank you, Supreme Knight Carl Anderson, for your years of service, for your pro-life witness, and for the example you have given to all of us. As we prepare for the next stage in the pro-life movement, let's take a look at what some Brother Knights are doing around the country.
We are a pregnancy assistance center. This is our annual 5K. Not only do Knights of Columbus give to us monetarily, they're going to be manning the routes at different corners, giving out water, directing people. They've always been a support for this ministry.
Knights being a family-oriented organization and also a community organization, anything we can do to better the lives of those in need, it's an opportunity to really put your faith into action.
We were asked if we would provide some support in terms of meals for the parenting programs at the Shady Grove Pregnancy Center.
The Knights of Columbus bring the food, and that's always such a wonderful thing because it's always set, it's always ready to go. It's important that women and men know that there's people supporting them.
It's just a wonderful opportunity for the Knights and all my brothers to be able to participate in this program.
All the women that have come to our center, we can't help them choose life without the support we receive. The Knights have a very special place in my heart and always have, so we're so thankful.
Modern Filius stands for Mother and Child. Modern Filius is going to be a maternity home with 10 bedrooms in Colorado Springs that is going to support the mother and the child.
The Knights in particular have promoted it throughout town. They've had speakers come. They're just some of our best supporters for life.
The goal was $10,000, and I know we've surpassed that.
Being a Knight to me is a way to visibly stand out in the world and say, we're Catholics, so we believe in God and this way of life, and hopefully draw others to our way of life.
It's absolutely amazing to see a great group of Catholics come together in support of something that is just life-giving.
Today we gathered all the gifts that have been given by a couple of different parishes to this pregnancy care center in support of the women that come here needing help.
I just got so much support. I'm very grateful for them. I appreciate them so much. They are always here. And I think I speak for every mom that comes here. That is like a family.
For the Knights of Columbus, our path is clear. Our support is for life.
In this new era of protecting life, the Knights of Columbus will lead the way. But abortion is not the only major challenge our Lord is calling us to meet head-on. At this moment, a storm is gathering. It casts a long shadow over people of faith as well as the family. Now, it's true that faith and family have always faced threats, but never have we experienced anything like this. On so many fronts, the shapers of culture are working to undermine the truths on which all societies depend. We see it in the denial of human dignity. We see it in the blatant attempts to redefine the human person and to push this radical agenda on our children. And we see it in the rejection of our basic human rights. We are at risk of losing the freedom to practice our faith and even to speak openly about the most foundational truths. Amid this crisis, it's getting harder to be Catholic, and it's tougher than ever to hand on our faith to our children and our grandchildren. Each of these challenges is a serious breach, a breach in the very bedrock of society. But that's where these times summon us to the places of the deepest need and the highest honor, where the fighting is fiercest and where the battle is ultimately won or lost. Trusting in God's strength and not in our own, the Knights of Columbus say yes. For our faith, for our families, we will step into the breach. This time of great challenge requires great men, so we must put our faith into action. As we prepare for this work, we can turn to Pope Francis for inspiration. At last year's convention, the Holy Father called us to, and I quote, be committed to building up rather than tearing down. And as we build up, we do so on the foundation that has served us so well for 140 years. When Father Michael McGivney founded the Knights, Catholics faced many threats. He rallied the men of his parish to confront and overcome them, and they did. But he couldn't imagine the dangers we face today. Still, our founder's vision has stood the test of time. For us, going into the breach means strengthening families and spreading the faith. It means deepening our commitment to our highest principles: charity, unity, and fraternity. Above all else, being a knight means drawing closer to the person of Jesus Christ, our King. That's why the Order is strongly supporting the National Eucharistic Revival in the United States. Our bishops launched this effort in June, and the Supreme Council has pledged $1 million in support. Already, many councils are promoting the revival in their parishes, and I know many more will follow. At my installation, I called upon all of us to be Knights of the Eucharist. And from the Philippines to France, from Canada to Cuba, we should all strengthen our love for Christ truly present in the Eucharist. The revival may be in the United States, but the Eucharist unites the universal church. And as the Order draws closer to Christ, we will find it easier to share the gospel. As Supreme Knight, one of my key priorities is evangelization. When I look back on the Order's history, I see evangelization in virtually everything we've done. Yet, today, there is a special urgency. 4 out of 5 Catholics will fall away from the church by their early 20s. And those who no longer identify as Catholics, if one were to consider them a denomination, would make up the 2nd largest religious group in the United States. In these difficult times, each of us needs a living faith, and each of us needs to lead others to the faith. That's why we'll soon launch a discipleship and evangelization initiative. A pilot program recently took place here in Tennessee, and the response was overwhelmingly positive. As we watch this video, I think you'll see why.
To be a true knight, in my opinion, means that you want to be a disciple of Christ. Taking what Blessed Michael McGivney did for us and be able to extend that, you want to carry that forward. We are men of the cross. 70 of us in total from councils participated. I think they did an excellent job putting some structure around how to deploy small groups. Follow the process of win, build, send. It will happen.
I think the training affected my faith in how I think about some of the things we do in the Knights of Columbus. Most times whenever you get involved in something, it's because of a personal invitation.
You know, Jesus did everything for us, so what would we not do for him? You know, and that's kind of set the whole tone.
Do you recruit just to recruit new members, or do you recruit to save souls? Trying something new takes a little bit of courage. In time, it will happen.
I think the word evangelization can probably scare some people. Any of us who are group leaders, our job and our main mission is not to convert people.
That's the Holy Spirit's job. We're just trying to let them be aware of how we can get closer to God through Bible study, through attending Mass, and living our faith.
When I joined the Knights of Columbus is the day that I became a better man through Christ. Everything going on in our world right now, I think this is such an amazing opportunity for us. I believe this evangelization and discipleship training program is fundamentally going to help us grow as an order in a way that we never have before.
This will be one of our most important initiatives. It will build on what we started with our Into the Breach video series. To date, those videos have been viewed more than 1 million times. And next year, we'll release a new series on marriage and family. As we focus more on faith formation, once again, we should look to our founder. In Blessed Michael McGivney, we see a powerful example of faithfulness. And in his beatification, we see a confirmation of our mission. It's fitting that we're gathered here in Tennessee, where Daniel Shackle is our general agent. Several years ago, through Father McGivney's intercession, the Lord healed a fatal condition in the unborn son of Dan and his wife Michelle. After thorough investigation, the church confirmed that the healing was a miracle, and that cleared the way for Father McGivney's beatification. Mikey Shackle is now a healthy and active 7-year-old. To the Shackle family, thank you for saying yes to life, and thank you for playing such an important role in our founder's beatification. And to young Michael McGivney Shackle, your life is a blessing to your family, to us, and to the world. There are many saints we can call upon for help. And like many knights, I have a special devotion to Saint Joseph. On the day I was installed, my first act was to consecrate my service as Supreme Knight to Saint Joseph. He embodies what Pope Francis called creative courage, which is exactly what we need. He is a model of determination in the face of adversity. Last October, I presented our pilgrim icon to Pope Francis during my first meeting with him. He blessed it and invoked St. Joseph's intercession for all of us. The St. Joseph Pilgrim Icon program is well underway, and hundreds of councils have helped tens of thousands of people deepen their devotion to St. Joseph. Another saint we can look to is Mother Teresa of Calcutta. This fall, we will commemorate the 25th anniversary of her death through a documentary celebrating her life. It's called Mother Teresa, No Greater Love, and it will play on screens in more than 800 theaters nationwide on October 3rd and 4th. I believe this is a very powerful film that will move hearts. And I can tell you that just recently, we had a family movie night at home, and we were all captivated by it. For Vanessa and me, the film brought back a flood of memories about the courage of Mother Teresa, and our girls were speechless, and even our 6-year-old watched every minute of it. This evening, we'll see highlights from this powerful film. We believe it will bring Mother Teresa's transformative witness of love for the poorest of the poor to a new generation. Mother Teresa embodied the charity to which Knights aspire. So did Father McGivney. They both understood that it's God Himself who reaches out in love to a world in need, and He does this through us. As Catholics, we must be powerful instruments of God's love. That's why around the world, more than 2 million Knights serve and sacrifice for the sake of others. In the last fraternal year, we donated nearly $154 million to worthy causes, both large and small. And we Knights stepped up with close to 48 million hours of volunteer service. Our charitable work is at the heart of the order, and our response to COVID-19 will surely rank among our finest hours. From helping stranded college students in Canada to sending oxygen tanks to the Amazon, we left no neighbor behind, no matter who or where they were. From the moment the pandemic began to fade, we rallied to rebuild our parishes. As Father Christensen, the pastor of my old parish, St. Rita's in Alexandria, Virginia, said, "The Knights never wavered in their support. They were there when we needed them the most." And in my travels over the past year, I've heard similar praise from bishops and priests around the world, and it makes me proud to be a Knight. Beyond the pandemic, we met many needs in many ways. Last year, we supported nearly 6,000 seminarians and postulants to the tune of $5.4 million. At the Vatican, we sponsored an important theological symposium on the priesthood. It was organized by our friend and brother Knight, His Eminence Cardinal Mark Willett. His Holiness Pope Francis began the conference by offering a moving reflection on his own priesthood. In Baltimore, we chartered a council at St. Mary's Seminary where young Michael McGivney prepared for priesthood. As this new generation of seminarians follows in our founder's footsteps, they will benefit from the experience of charity and fraternity they will find in the Knights. Our support for priests and seminarians is just one dimension of our charity. The past year saw countless acts of service. Through Coats for Kids, we gave nearly 150,000 children the gift of warmth in the coldest months. In partnership with the Global Wheelchair Mission, we gave the gift of mobility to nearly 9,000 people. While the pandemic forced the cancellation of many Special Olympics events, we maintained our strong support. Councils donated more than $3.7 million, and individual Knights volunteered more than 418,000 hours. Our support for Special Olympics is a powerful sign of our unwavering defense of the dignity of the human person. And as Knights, we know that every gift, every life is a gift. We also stepped up in the wake of disaster. Last year, local councils gave nearly $3 million to victims of tornadoes, hurricanes, and wildfires. In Kentucky, we responded to the deadliest tornadoes in state history with truckloads of supplies for the hardest hit communities. In Louisiana, we helped rebuild after the destruction of Hurricane Ida. As one local pastor put it, our response was a light in the darkness. In New Mexico, the state's largest ever wildfire sparked a massive response. As 25,000 people fled their homes, Knights stocked evacuation sites with food, water, and other essentials. Whatever the crisis, we aren't just there in the short run. The Knights stay for the long haul, and we help these communities come back stronger. Consider our work in the Middle East. To date, we have provided $32 million in relief for persecuted Christians in Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon. Together, we're rebuilding these communities through housing, education, and health care. And our work to protect the cradle of Christianity will continue in the years ahead. It's a special privilege to be joined today by several friends from the Middle East. We welcome His Beatitude, Patriarch Yunan of Antioch, and Archbishop Warda of Erbil. Please join me in recognizing these courageous pastors. Much of our charity serves military members and their families. We are so grateful for our partnership with Archbishop Timothy Broglio, who is with us today. Archbishop, I speak for all Knights when I express our deep gratitude for all you do for our Catholic men and women in uniform. We recently launched the 6th edition of our military prayer book, Armed with the Faith. We've already delivered the first 100,000 copies to the Archdiocese for the Military Services in the United States. As a veteran myself, I know the value of our support for the military. Daily prayer and the sacraments were essential for me and for many of those with whom I served. And I'm confident that our military prayer book will continue to benefit soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines. Our support for the military springs from our 4th principle, patriotism. We live in a time of rising attacks on national heritage. There are those who want to tear down our nations and rewrite our histories. As Catholics, we know that the nation, rightly understood, is essential to our well-being. It's our responsibility to build up our homelands by leading lives of virtue, by pursuing justice, and by caring for the less fortunate. We must have the courage to engage in political life and bring our values into the public square. Not because we all agree, but because we share a common good. We owe a common debt to those who have gone before us, and we have a common duty to those who will follow us. Speaking in Canada last week, Pope Francis took on cancel culture and the tendency to judge history only by contemporary categories. The Holy Father cautioned that this mentality creates a bland uniformity and an intolerance of differences. It concentrates only on the needs of certain individuals in the present moment, while neglecting our duty to the weak and the vulnerable of our nations. And so, as patriots, we will stand in the breach, because it is love of country that will save our countries. Whatever country we live in, our charity extends far beyond our borders. In Haiti, when a 7.2 magnitude earthquake hit last August, we gave $175,000 in much-needed support. And when Afghanistan fell to the Taliban, the Missionaries of Charity in Kabul were forced to close their orphanage for disabled children. The sisters and the children evacuated to Rome, and the Knights of Columbus met them there with a helping hand. Archbishop Lori and I gave the children wheelchairs that were blessed by His Eminence Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle, a brother knight. And I have to say that in my first year as Supreme Knight, I've had some incredible experiences, but nothing was more moving than being with these severely disabled children. Their parents could no longer care for them. They were abandoned in the streets of Kabul, and the police had picked them up and brought them to the sisters. The sisters had been caring for them for years, and when Afghanistan fell to the Taliban, the sisters refused to leave without the children. I've never seen love like I saw in these Missionaries of Charity. This video tells their story.
I've been there for 15 years in Kabul. We found that the poverty was great. When you saw the condition of the children, some of them are being abandoned in the streets, in the hospitals, then we thought it was a good way to start a home for this kind of children.
I requested to go to serve the people of Afghanistan because I thought I am not going alone. Jesus is with me, so I have nothing to fear.
When I heard that we have to leave Kabul, my first question was, what about our children?
We said, no, we are not going to leave. Even whatever consequence, we will die with the children, but we are not going to leave the children behind.
We are at the Queen of Love house on the outskirts of Rome, and we just delivered wheelchairs to the Missionaries of Charity. They are caring for Afghan orphans who were abandoned on the streets of Afghanistan. It's a profound story of love from the Missionaries of Charity.
Our first principle is charity. These beautiful sisters here are all about charity, and these beautiful children bring out love and return love.
As Knights, we knew we could do something. The sisters needed wheelchairs, and we used our wheelchair program. These wheelchairs are really going to help them in their care for the children.
The Knights have been very generous in supporting Mother Teresa and her mission in serving the poorest of the poor throughout the world. We want to thank the Knights for all their support and their generosity towards us Missionaries of Charity and our poor people.
And we want to assure them, as Mother used to say, our gratitude is our prayer for each one of you.
The original sign of our charity is our financial protection for Catholic families. Father McGivney created the Knights to care for widows and orphans. 140 years later, we have maintained this noble mission while expanding it dramatically. What started as a small mutual aid society in 1882 is now a Fortune 1000 life insurance company. And we are widely respected as one of the best life insurance providers in America. We continue to receive superior ratings from Standard & Poor's and AM Best for our financial strength. What explains our record of success? There are many reasons, starting with the foundation of faith upon which our business is built. We are called to care for families, and that leads us to do things that other companies don't do. In a time of online quotes, our agents and members still meet face-to-face. We offer a personal connection in an impersonal age, and everything we do is grounded in faith. That is the true KFC difference. Thanks to the hard work of our dedicated field agents, who now number more than 900, we have a record $119 billion of life insurance in force protecting Catholic families. In 2021, our agents set a new standard of excellence. They achieved the highest sales on record. I am grateful that more than 45 general agents are with us today. Please join me in thanking them and our entire field force for their remarkable achievement. But we aren't resting on our laurels. The financial struggles facing Catholic families are mounting. So is the pressure to abandon the Church's teaching in the marketplace. We believe there is a better way. Knights of Columbus Asset Advisors offers faith-based investments for individuals, dioceses, and Catholic organizations. It provides the world's broadest lineup of Catholic investment strategies, including our highly attractive mutual funds and other investments. These products fully align with Catholic teaching on ethical investing. KFC Asset Advisors empowers Catholic families to be in the market, but not of the market. They can be confident that their investments with us are fiscally and morally responsible. That explains why our mutual funds have taken off. In less than a year, individuals and families have invested more than $85 million in our mutual funds. And across all our products, our clients have invested more than $1.6 billion with KFC Asset Advisors. In 2019, we introduced the Knights of Columbus Charitable Fund. It helps individuals and families align their charitable giving with the faith. At the end of 2021, this donor-advised fund was managing $58 million in charitable assets. And last year, we helped our clients donate $3 million to worthy charities. We've come a long way from the Mutual Aid Society of Father McGivney's day. Yet, while our model has changed, our mission remains the same. We serve and strengthen the Catholic family, and never have we done so much for so many. Why has our founder's vision endured? One reason is the missionary zeal of our forefathers. Think about how far we've come since those men gathered in the basement of St. Mary's. Think of how they inspired others to follow in their footsteps. And now, think of how you and I can reach a new generation of Knights. With that same spirit, we can expand our brotherhood to new people and new places. We are building on a strong foundation. Today, we have more than 2 million Brother Knights in over 16,000 councils around the world. And more than 65,000 men joined our ranks last year alone. Even with this success, our continued growth must remain a top priority, because even more men need what Father McGivney envisioned when he founded the Knights. He created a place where Catholic men could thrive, find authentic fellowship, and devote themselves to a higher purpose. He founded a brotherhood where men can forge their faith and achieve the greatness to which God Himself calls them. Men of all ages need the Knights, and we need to bring the order to more communities. Last year, I launched an initiative to engage more Hispanic Catholics. About half of all Catholics in the United States between 18 and 29 are Latino. Their faith and their gifts are shaping the future of the Catholic Church. Already we have many committed Hispanic Knights who daily strengthen the order. But the truth is, we should have many more. We are being presented with a great opportunity to witness to solidarity in this country and throughout the world. That's why we're creating a more culturally relevant experience for ethnically Hispanic families. And we're intentionally cultivating more Latino leaders across the order. It's also why we continue the great work of our Native Solidarity Initiative. Through the years, we've focused more energy to ensure the order continues to be a home for Native American and First Nation Catholic men and their families. That has been our tradition for more than a century. The order was proud to support the Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops as the Church in Canada welcomed Pope Francis last week. The Supreme Council was a major sponsor of the papal visit. We were represented by a delegation of Knights led by First Nation member and former Supreme Director Graydon Nicholas. And we all joined with the Holy Father and our Canadian Knights as they prayed for reconciliation and healing. Again, I point to our founding. In an age of significant immigration, Father McGivney and the First Knights built a brotherhood that deliberately invited men from all backgrounds. They understood our Lord's universal mission and the Church's role as a source of unity for all people. So today, while we focus in a special way on Hispanic Catholics, I say to all Brother Knights across this country and around the world, in this age of division, let's make the Knights of Columbus a powerful sign of Catholic unity. Knights of Columbus, our moment is now. Our mission is clear. Preserve life, protect the family, proclaim the faith. The world needs men who will match these times, and we are rising to meet this challenge. Look no further than our response to the war in Ukraine. Our actions convey the essence of what a knight must do and who a knight must be. Ukraine has a special place in our hearts. We brought the order there 10 years ago. Our first knights were the leaders of Ukraine's Catholic churches, the head of the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church, and the Roman Catholic Archbishop of Lviv, who is with us today. I was with the Archbishop in Ukraine and saw firsthand his care for his suffering people. Archbishop Miletsky, for your courage in the face of such adversity, we thank you. Today we have more than 1,900 knights in Ukraine. They and their families and all the people of Ukraine deserve to live in peace. But Russia has forced them to fight for their lives and for the very survival of their country. Many of our brother knights are on the front lines even now. And with sadness, word has reached us that at least 2 brother knights have given their lives. Their names are Petro Popovich and Oleg Vorobyov. We pray for their families, and we commend their souls to the Lord. And as an order, we pledge to honor their sacrifice and stand with Ukraine for as long as it takes. Since the start of the war, the order has stood in the breach. Within 36 hours of the Russian invasion, we established the Ukraine Solidarity Fund. And to date, we have raised nearly $19 million. It's one of the largest and fastest relief efforts in the order's history. Due to the generosity of knights and all who support our work, we are making a difference on the ground. Day in and day out, Polish and Ukrainian knights send truckloads of humanitarian supplies to bombed-out cities and communities in need. They've become known across Ukraine as KFC charity convoys. And thanks to the truly extraordinary efforts of Polish knights, we've also set up KFC Mercy Centers, modeled on our relief efforts in World War I. Just over a century ago, the Knights of Columbus welcomed Allied soldiers with the words, "Everybody welcome, everything free." Today, those same words greet Ukrainian families in their own language. In April, I visited our Mercy Center in Ravenna at the Ukraine-Poland border. I saw firsthand how we provided an oasis of material and spiritual support. And in Ukraine itself, I visited with displaced families who had taken refuge in a 14th century monastery. With the help of the Knights, the Archdiocese of Lviv had turned the monastery into a refugee center. And while there, I met a woman from Odessa whose daughter is in the Ukrainian army. She fled her home with her granddaughter and a single bag of belongings. You might expect this woman to be despondent. Instead, she was overflowing with gratitude. She repeatedly thanked me for everything the Knights of Columbus has done. And I told her, we are with her and all the people of Ukraine. I will always remember what I saw, and I will never forget the courage I saw in Ukrainian Knights. Before I left, I formally installed Ukraine's State Deputy, Yuri Miletsky. Yuri is with us today. Yuri, I speak for every Knight of Columbus when I say you and your countrymen inspire us. Please stand and be recognized for the faith and patriotism of Ukrainian Knights. Before I traveled to Poland and Ukraine, I had the privilege to meet a second time with Pope Francis. We talked at length about the order's work in Ukraine. The Holy Father was animated as we spoke. As the meeting ended, Pope Francis gestured with both hands and encouraged me, saying, "Go on, go on." The Holy Father was not just speaking to me. He was encouraging every Knight, all 2 million of us. He was saying, go on in defense of life. He was saying, go on in service to faith and family. And in this time of great challenge and even greater need, he was saying, go on in our witness of charity. The days ahead will be difficult. The road will be long. So let us set out as our founder and the men before us did, giving thanks and praise to God, asking for his help, because in him and only in him are all things possible. And the Lord, who has brought us this far, will carry us still further as together we step into the breach. Vivat Jesus!
Thank you. Thank you, worthy Supreme Knight. May it please your eminences, your beatitude, your excellencies, Reverend Monsignors, fathers, deacons, past Supreme Knights, Supreme officers, directors, delegates, distinguished guests, brother knights and ladies, family members, and friends. It's my great privilege this evening to present to you the Deus guest of this 140th Supreme Council States Dinner. Hopefully this will be done in an expeditious manner, but I need your help to make it happen. As I call each name, I ask that you stand briefly and be acknowledged. Upon being introduced, each person is to be recognized by one, uno, clap of your hands. It's a custom that we've been following for many years. The one clap acknowledgement has proven beneficial, saving up to 20 minutes. Now, it's been a few years since we've done this, So we're going to practice. Let's try it with two names. Christopher Columbus, discoverer of the Americas. Blessed Michael McGivney, founder of the Knights of Columbus. Man, even the pandemic hasn't slowed you down at all. Very good. Once I completely introduce a row, we'll extend a well-deserved round of applause for that row. And now, let us begin. Beginning to my far left and your far right, on the top row, I present to you State Deputy of Tennessee Fred Laufenberg and his wife Donna. Abbot Peter Novakoski, Emeritus of St. Peter's Abbey. Most Reverend Titus Saw Sang Byung, Bishop of Military Ordinate of Korea. Scott O'Connor, Supreme Director. Most Reverend William Byrne, Bishop of Springfield. Most Reverend Michael McGovern, Bishop of Belleville. Supreme Director Antonio Pasqua of Nevada and his wife Mercedita. Most Reverend William Joan Sin, Bishop of Des Moines. Most Reverend Juan Betancourt, Auxiliary Bishop of Hartford. Most Reverend Bartolome Santos Jr., Bishop of Iba. Supreme Director Daniel Duchesne of Quebec and his wife Sylvie. Most Reverend Pierre Gaudreault, Bishop of Saint-Anne-de-la-Pocatière. Most Reverend Stephen Reka, Bishop of Birmingham. Most Reverend Carl Kame, Bishop of Wichita. Supreme Director Stephen Kehoe of Virginia and his wife Wendy. Most Reverend Michael Siss, Bishop of San Angelo. Most Reverend Andrew Cousins, Bishop of Crookston. Supreme Director John Kennedy of New Jersey and his wife Helene. Most Reverend Kurt Burnett, Eparchy of Passaic. Most Reverend John Folda, Bishop of Fargo. Supreme Director Sean Halpayne and his wife Brenda of Arizona. And the Most Reverend Robert Baker, Bishop Emeritus of Birmingham. And let's give them a round of applause. Now, beginning to my far left and your far right in the first row, I present to you Supreme Director John Applebaum of Missouri and his wife Carol. Most Reverend Francis Yu Su-il, Bishop Emeritus of the Military Ordinate of Korea. The Most Reverend Timothy Doherty, Bishop of Lafayette. Supreme Director Renan Dufour of Louisiana and his wife Elizabeth. Most Reverend John Lafitte, Prelate of the Order of Malta. Most Reverend John Bars, Bishop of Rockville Center. Supreme Director Michael Benson of Rhode Island and his wife Leanne. Most Reverend Richard Sticka, Bishop of Knoxville. Supreme Director Antonio Benuelos of Iowa and his wife Myra. Most Reverend Edward Burns, Bishop of Dallas. Most Reverend Barry Nestout, Bishop of Richmond. Supreme Director R.C. Lim of British Columbia and his wife Matilda. Most Reverend Brian Beda, Eparchy of Toronto and Eastern Canada. Supreme Director Anthony Monopoly of Connecticut and his wife Karen. The Most Reverend James Connolly, Bishop of Lincoln. Most Reverend James Johnston Jr., Bishop of Kansas City. Supreme Director Colin George of North Carolina and his wife Gina. Most Reverend Anthony Taylor, Bishop of Little Rock. Supreme Director Carmine Musumeci of New York and his wife Claudia. Most Reverend Peter Libashi, Bishop of Manchester. Most Reverend William Denninger, Bishop Emeritus of Grand Island. Supreme Director Jose Reyes Jr. of the Philippines and his wife Ophelia. Most Reverend Dennis Sullivan, Bishop of Camden. Supreme Director Arthur Peters of Ontario and his wife Angie. Most Reverend David Motyuk, Bishop of Ukraine, Eparchy of Edmonton. Most Reverend Kevin Boland, Bishop Emeritus of Savannah. Supreme Director Daniel Rossi of New Jersey and his wife Alice. Most Reverend Nicholas Samra, Eparch of Newton. Supreme Director Michael Wills of Tennessee and his wife Kathleen. And for your round of applause for the front row. And now on this dais, to my far left, I present to you Supreme Director John Morella of Connecticut and his wife Amy. Most Reverend Patrick Pinder, Archbishop of Nassau. Most Reverend Paul Coakley, Archbishop of Oklahoma City. Most Reverend Shelton Faw, Bishop of Louisville. Most Reverend Bernard Hebda, Archbishop of St. Paul in Minnesota. Most Reverend Jose Cambatan, Archbishop of Cagayan de Oro. Most Reverend Christian Lépine, Archbishop of Montreal. Most Reverend Gregory Hatmeyer, Bishop of Atlanta. My very beautiful wife, Rachel Mason, and baby Owen. His Eminence Blaise Supich, Archbishop of Chicago. His Eminence Wilton Gregory, Archbishop of Washington. Deputy Supreme Knight Paul O'Sullivan and his wife Susan. His Eminence Orlando Quivado, Archbishop Emeritus of Cotabato. His Eminence Gerald Lacroix, Archbishop of Quebec and Primate of Canada. His Eminence Justin Regali, Archbishop Emeritus of Philadelphia. Most Reverend William Laurie, Archbishop of Baltimore and Supreme Chaplain. And finally, from my far right and to the left, I present to you Supreme Warden Jorge Estrada Avila and his wife Maria. Most Reverend Gustavo Rodriguez Vega, Archbishop of Yucatan. His Excellency Grusas, Archbishop of Vilnius. Most Reverend Bashar Mati Warda, Chaldean Archbishop of Erbil. His Excellency Mokachitsky, Archbishop of Lviv. Most Reverend Timothy Brolio, Archbishop of the Military Services. His Beatitude Ignatius Joseph III, Patriarch of Antioch. Supreme Treasurer Ronald Schwartz and his wife Jeanette. Our host ordinary, the Most Reverend Mark Spalding, Bishop of Nashville. His Eminence James Harvey, Archpriest of the Papal Basilica of St. Paul outside the walls. Past Supreme Knight Carl A. Anderson and his wife Dorian. His Eminence Thomas Collins, Archbishop of Toronto. His Eminence Daniel DiNardo, Archbishop of Galveston, Houston. His Eminence Timothy Dolan, Archbishop of New York. And our most worthy Supreme Knight Patrick E. Kelly and his wife Vanessa. Round of applause. Worthy Supreme Knight, that concludes the introductions.
Thank you, worthy Supreme Secretary, for a great job. We are very happy to be here in Tennessee. The Knights have a long history here and some outstanding leaders. And in the Bishop of Nashville, we know we have a steadfast friend. He's a longtime Knight, having joined the order while in seminary, and we're grateful for his outstanding leadership in this vibrant Diocese of Nashville. Please join me in welcoming Bishop Mark Spalding. Your Excellency.
Okay, I'm going to make a motion. I've got a long text, and I'm going to motion. The motion is I'll give you one off the cuff, much shorter. I got a second. It'll be put into the record, okay? The great Diocese of Nashville does welcome everyone once again. It is great. We're 185 years old here in the great state of Tennessee. Our daughter dioceses here in the state are Memphis, 1970. They just celebrated their 50th. And the youngest of the three, Knoxville. And we, all three bishops, are so glad you're here. This is a great state. I see the Dominican sisters right before me. They're a great part of our tradition and presence here in the Catholic presence in the state. We're growing. The great blessing of the Diocese of Nashville, along with all throughout this great state, is we're a growing state. We're growing as Catholics as well, and the faith is prospering here. And I truly want to say to one and all, from this great tradition, we are so thankful for the Knights. They've been a part of us. We've been through hard times and difficult challenges throughout our 185 years of being in the state, and the Knights were always there. So you've seen us welcome you, make a part of this last night, the great concert, and you saw Craig Morgan. He's from Dixon. You know the Shackles are from Dixon as well. And that's just a great little town in this great diocese. They produce a lot of good Catholics there, okay? So it's good to have you here. The Knights, keep doing the good you're doing. It is wonderful. I never leave an occasion like this, and the Knights from Tennessee know this, and you're about to hear it. As bishop, and I can speak for every one of them, and when I say this to you this night, I love the Knights. God bless you. It's wonderful to have you here.
Well, he loves the Knights, and we love him. Thank you, Your Excellency. And thank you for being such a wonderful host to us this evening and today. From time to time, the Knights of Columbus bestows the St. Michael Award on a man who has distinguished himself by exemplary service to the order and to the Church. The award is named after St. Michael the Archangel, the guardian of the Church and the great angelic warrior in the battle of good versus evil. Naturally, this year our thoughts go to the war in Ukraine. And while there are many Knights worthy of recognition for their work, tonight I have chosen to honor a leader who has stepped into the breach in the greatest traditions of the Knights of Columbus. Yuri Miletsky is one of the busiest and bravest men in the entire order. As State Deputy of Ukraine, his jurisdiction covers an entire nation. It's nearly the size of Texas and encompasses both Latin Rite and Ukrainian Greek Catholics. And if that weren't enough, he's a husband, a father, and the CEO of the Ukrainian branch of the third largest metal packaging firm in the world. When war broke out, Yuri could have easily stepped back from his duties as state deputy. He could also have decided to take up arms for his country, and I know that that was on his heart. But Yuri talked to his courageous wife, Ola, and they decided that the best way for Yuri to serve his country was by devoting his time and energy to the Knights. In choosing to lead, and to lead well, Yuri has helped hundreds of thousands of men, women, and children suffering in desperate circumstances. With the help of the Ukraine Solidarity Fund, he has opened channels of support from Knights in Poland, the United States, and around the world. In short, he's been an instrument of hope to the Ukrainian people. So this evening, in recognition of his exemplary leadership, I am proud to present the St. Michael Award to Ukraine State Deputy Yuri Miletsky.
worthy Supreme Knight, dear brother knights and friends, I am standing here tonight as a humble representative of nation fighting for its freedom. I represent, first of all, 2,000 Ukrainian knights, but also those around us whom we serve, our brothers and sisters in Christ. Some of our Ukrainian brother knights have taken up arms to defend our motherland. Other brother knights are military chaplains. Some of us load and unload trucks. Others distribute the foods. All of us are working and fighting for victory. Let there be no doubt in your minds that this victory of which we dream is the triumph of good over evil, of freedom over slavery, of life over death. Over the past 6 months, we saw the unthinkable come to life. We saw death, destruction, rape. Our enemy uses lies, in addition to deadly force. But the truth is on our side. We are the children of light. The Paschal Jesus is our hope and light at the time of the darkness of trials. Prayer is our weapon. Yes, whatever the Pentagon can send also helps. But all of us gathered here know all too well that evil can be conquered only with the power of the Savior who suffered, died, was buried, and rose again on the third day. And so we pray. We also know that others pray for us. I hope that there isn't a single person in this room who has not prayed for the triumph of good over evil in Ukraine. And so I am saying thank you. Thank you for your prayers, for your sacrifices, for your support, and your work on behalf of nation fighting of its existence and its freedom. I bring with me a flag, which represents that we are fighting for. Blue stands for a peaceful sky free of bombs and clouds. Yellow stands for wheat, prosperity and ability to work freely and enjoy the fruits of our labor. This particular flag is not just an abstract symbol of birth signature, it bears signatures of many Ukrainian soldiers, some of them our brother knights. Their signatures are pledges that they will keep fighting for the blue sky of peace and the prosperity of our land and its people. Worthy Supreme Knight, I give you this flag and I ask you to don't forget our nation, which relies on you for its very existence. Thank you.
When it came time to choose a keynote speaker for my first states dinner as Supreme Knight, I said to myself, to whom shall we go? As it turns out, that phrase from the Gospel of John is precisely Cardinal Timothy Dolan's Episcopal motto, ad quem ibimus, to whom shall we go? Of course, that made it an easy choice. As Archbishop of New York, Cardinal Dolan has one of the toughest jobs in the church. It requires an untiring pastor and the kind of bishop who has the skill to stand on the world stage. To us, of course, Cardinal Dolan is more than a pastor and more than a bishop. He is our brother knight, and he is proud of that. And we are proud of him. I've worked closely with Cardinal Dolan over the years, and I have always been impressed by his faith, his humor, and his deep knowledge of the history of the Catholic Church in the United States. As a historian, he appreciates the impact the Knights of Columbus has had on the Church in America, and he recognizes the unique role that we continue to play. These same gifts make him a fitting chairman of the U.S. Bishops' Committee for Religious Liberty. As a student of history, he is no stranger to the struggles Catholics have faced over the decades. The Church is blessed to have him where he is, and we can all be grateful for his work and for his witness. I expect we'll see his talents on full display tonight. Please join me in welcoming our brother knight, the Archbishop of New York, His Eminence, Cardinal Timothy Dolan.
Thank you, Patrick. Well, my brother knights and dear wives, brother bishops and priests and deacons, women and men, religious friends, one and all, believe me, what an honor and a joy to be with you all this evening. Thank you, Supreme Knight, for your characteristically gracious invitation to give this keynote. Just what we need on a festive evening like this, a keynote address. Anyway, is not the bond of friendship at this convention verifiable? Isn't it tangible, a bond of friendship and joy? Perhaps you've heard of this new terrorist cell, a reportedly dangerous group that some nations have actually deemed a threat to their national security. Nicaragua, for instance, has just expelled them, calling them treacherous. India, the country of this alleged perilous group's origin, severely restricted them, forbidding them to receive any funds from outside allies. I feel it is my heavy duty this evening to warn you, brother knights, of this ominous, suspicious, menacing group. They are called the Missionaries of Charity, founded by that machete-wielding Mother Teresa of Calcutta. Now, folks, why on God's green earth would the simple, serving, humble, loving missionaries of charity be considered a threat to any government? We know why, don't we? The same reason the first Christians were deemed enemies of Caesar. The same reason priests in Mexico are being hounded and executed as I speak. The same reason Blessed Cardinal Joseph Vincenti of Hungary, Blessed Cardinal Stefan Wyszynski of Poland were arrested in the 1950s, because these brave martyrs and confessors of the faith were convinced that absolute allegiance could only be given to the Lord. They held close to their hearts the very first of the 10 Commandments, I am the Lord thy God, thou shalt not have strange gods before me. And that any government that would demand total subservience was in fact a pagan idol, because they clung to the notion that totus tuus, all yours, was a vow one could only make to Almighty God, not an earthly system, because they insisted that no temporal rule could intrude upon the most crucial sanctuary around their soul, their conscience. No earthly power, money, government, nation, a presumed right, a drive, or a cause can claim our complete trust. Only God can. Those who want total dominion over us, totalitarianism is an apt word, thus despise faith. People of faith, you see, preserve an important acre of their identity for the Lord alone, and they're willing to be harassed, exiled, or even persecuted to protect that value. They're ready to go into the breach. And that causes totalitarians to seethe, to threaten, to go after these treacherous folks who will not be completely subservient to what Dorothy Day called Holy Mother State. And thus, their first assault these regimes make is upon people of faith. The first right inherent in the human person they punch is religious freedom. Brother Knights, that Patrick Kelly honored me with the invitation to address you this evening gives me the chance, as chair of your bishop's committee on religious freedom, to thank you for your historic defense of this, our first and most cherished liberty. You see, from the start, our founder, Blessed Michael McGivney, believed firmly in the American foundational principle that every person of whatever faith had the right to hold his head high in this republic, to freely and confidently exercise his religion. His knights professed God and country, believing with our first bishop, John Carroll of Baltimore, whose cousin had signed the Declaration of Independence, whose brother served in our first Congress, that a good Catholic was also a loyal patriot. Well, this led the sons of Michael McGivney to fight religious bigotry here in America, to coordinate the arrival of chaplains to serve our soldiers in World War I, to arise to the defense of our neighbors to the south as the Mexican government persecuted the church, to oppose totalitarianism of the Nazis and fascists, to stand up for the church oppressed by communism in Central and Eastern Europe, and to strengthen the church here at home especially in service to the poor, the oppressed, the racially segregated, the suffering in Haiti, and now, as I recently saw firsthand, those brave refugees from Ukraine. From the start, and now in our 15th decade, we've held with our founding fathers that our fundamental liberties flow from and are not compromised by our number one freedom, that of religion, to worship and publicly exercise that faith in the public square. And in fact, you know these names: George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, James Madison. They insisted that this freedom of religion is precisely what makes our other liberties secure. Why? It guarantees that all those assured rights are not gifts from a government, but from God, and thus cannot be tampered with or chipped away by any earthly force, government, or bureaucratic hounding. We gratefully one clap will do, all right. We gratefully recall that every uplifting and liberating moment in American social progress, think of it, from the revolution itself, to the abolition of slavery, to the defense of the laborer, to the reforms of of a William Jennings Bryan, Theodore and Franklin Roosevelt, to the defense of freedom threatened abroad, to the civil rights movement, to the pro-life movement, all of them and more have been sparked and sustained by people of faith who saw, as did the Reverend Martin Luther King, that such public witness was only possible because our religious liberty was assured. As Carl Anderson quotes in his splendid "These Liberties We Hold Sacred," the words of the Reverend King, "We demand the fulfillment of the promises made in the Declaration of Independence, and in doing so from a religious basis is not only appropriate, but wholly consistent with the original vision of America's founders." Now, my brother Knights, I need not chill the wonderful joy of this state's dinner with a caveat about today's many threats to religious freedom. It might be raw, hard persecution in many countries, some represented this evening, or more to the point here in America, what Pope Francis has dubbed a soft persecution. Because we Knights have been more than vigorous in expressing and heeding such warnings. Boy, as recently as this afternoon, we heard our Supreme Knight remind us that it's getting harder and harder for us to be committed Catholics, bringing our convictions to the public square. And yet, my brothers and sisters, it is into that breach that we go in our promotion of religious freedom. Just this morning, before Mass, some of my brother bishops came up to me and whispered, they said, "Psst, Tim, do you realize your alb is all muddy at the bottom?" And I hadn't. And I looked, and sure enough, there was mud all over the bottom. And then it dawned on me, yeah, because I just got back from a glorious 2 weeks vacation in Ireland. And whenever I go to Ireland, one of the highlights is to celebrate Mass at one of the many Mass rocks that dot that green soil. You're familiar with the story, correct? During those vicious 2.5 centuries, when the Catholic faith, its public practice, was prescribed by the dreaded penal laws in Ireland, viciously enforced by their neighboring island to the east, the Irish people were not about to give up, and the whispers would go around that a priest was going to risk his life to gather us for Sunday Mass, and sneak out they would go to the woods in a secluded, hidden area on a flat rock where the priest would offer Mass with sentries posted around in case the dreaded forces of oppression would attack them. It was at that Mass rock outside Millbrook, outside of Killarney, where I offered Mass just last week and got all muddied up. There, a Dominican priest by the name of Father Thaddeus Moriarty, offering the Eucharist on that Mass rock in 1649, was arrested. He was drugged. He was drugged into Killarney. He was tortured. And there he said, "Earthly law I heed indeed, but for when they call for me to disobey the heavenly lawgiver." I don't think I'm ever going to wash that alb. My brother Knights, into the breach we go. Into the breach we've gone. We are going and will go, realizing for God and country, our country prospers when in God we trust. Our faith flourishes when our freedom to exercise it is guaranteed. For my brother bishops, I say to you, it sure is an honor and consolation to have you at our side as we defend that liberty. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Eminence, for that beautiful reflection. We are grateful that you are leading the U.S. Bishop's work on religious freedom. It's fitting that you focus so much in your talk on the Missionaries of Charity. And as you mentioned, the Knights of Columbus were proud and constant supporters of St. Teresa of Calcutta. Mother Teresa spoke at the States Dinner in 1992 when your predecessor, Cardinal O'Connor, hosted the Supreme Convention in New York City. Mother Teresa has a special place in the hearts of all Knights and all Catholics. This fall, we will commemorate the 25th anniversary of her death through a documentary celebrating her life. It's called Mother Teresa, No Greater Love. This documentary was filmed on 5 continents, and it was made possible by the relationship of trust between the Knights of Columbus and the Missionaries of Charity. They opened their apostolates, their archives, and their hearts. And thanks to them, I believe we have produced what may very well be the definitive film on St. Teresa of Calcutta. This film will open in more than 800 theaters across America on October 3rd and 4th. Here are some highlights from this powerful film. Well, I can assure you that the film, unlike that trailer, will not be a silent film. But Mother Teresa is really a model for all of us, and in her own way, she stepped into the breach, and she stayed there as a luminous beacon of hope. She famously said, "I can do things you cannot do. You can do things I cannot do. Together, we can do great things." All Knights, and indeed all Catholics, should take these words to heart. Together, we can do great things. And we must do as she did, drawing our strength from the Lord. So as we come to an end to this wonderful evening, I now turn to our Supreme Chaplain to close our evening with a benediction. Your Excellency.
So I wonder if some of you, all of you who can, would join me in singing the Salve Regina so that we might entrust the Knights of Columbus, this convention, and all of the works of this order to the intercession of the Blessed Virgin Mary, Our Lady of Guadalupe. Salve Regina, Mater Misericordiae, vital dulcedo, et spes nostra salve. Ante clamamus, exoles Filii Eve, a te suspiramus, gementes et flentes, in hoc lacrimarum vale. Ea ergo advocata nostra, illos tuos, misericordes oculos, ad nos confer. Et Iesum benedictum fructum ventris tui, nobis post hoc exilium ostende. O clemens, O pia, O dulcis Virgo Maria. The Lord be with you. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Our help is in the name of the Lord. And may Almighty God bless you, the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Blessed Michael McGivney, Vivat Jesus. Okay, there we go. Thanks again.
Thank you all for coming, and good night.
Well, there you have it. That concludes today's live coverage of the Knights of Columbus 140th Supreme Convention, coming to you from Nashville, Tennessee. Don't forget to join us tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Eastern when we resume our coverage. Don't forget about going out to the web and checking out kofc.org for all things about the Knights, and EWTN.com for all things about EWTN. And for Jonathan Reyes and myself, I'm Doug Keck. Good night.